Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Laura Delaney woke up to an empty bed. First she thought nothing of it. Maybe Eric had woken up early. Maybe he had an early meeting at the firm and left quietly, not wanting to disturb her. But as she turned over, the bedsheets were cold. Not just empty but cold, like they had been that way for hours. A ripple of unease spread through her as she glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 6:47 a.m. Eric wasn't an early riser. He never left before 8 unless something was wrong. And he always kissed her goodbye before heading out the door. She sat up, stretching, and listened. The house was silent. Too silent. A feeling settled into her stomach. Something was off. Throwing the covers aside, she swung her legs over the bed and padded across the hardwood floor. "Eric," she called, her voice echoing in the emptiness of the house. No answer. Her heartbeat quickened as she checked the ensuite bathroom. No steam on the mirror, no running shower. The toothbrush in its usual place. The towel folded neatly, like no one had been there at all. Laura hurried down the hallway, peeking into the guest bathroom, the study, the kitchen. Still nothing. She reached for her phone on the kitchen counter and dialed his number. Rang. And rang. And rang. And voicemail. A tremor ran through her fingers as she set the phone down. "Where are you, Eric?" She walked to the garage, opening the door with a flick of the switch. His car was still parked in its spot. His keys hung on the hook by the door. His wallet, untouched, sat on the counter near the coffee machine. Even his phone charger was still plugged in beside the couch. It was as if he had simply ceased to exist. The creeping sense of dread clawed at her throat. Laura wasn't prone to panic. She was a logical person, someone who didn't let her emotions get the best of her. But this didn't make sense. Where would he go without his phone, his car, his wallet? She took a deep breath, steeling herself. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he went for a walk. Maybe a neighbor needed help. Maybe. Then she noticed something odd. Eric's office door was ajar. That alone wasn't strange, but he was meticulous. He always locked his office door before bed, a habit that had started years ago when he began working on high-profile legal cases. Confidentiality, he had said. Better to be safe than sorry. But tonight the door was cracked open. Just enough to invite her in. Laura hesitated before pushing it open. The dim morning light streamed through the blinds, casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. His leather chair was slightly pulled back, as if someone had been sitting there recently. And then her eyes landed on the desk drawer. It was slightly ajar. Another anomaly. Her stomach twisted as she reached for the handle. It shouldn't be open. Eric never left things unfinished. Never left anything unsecured. A flicker of hesitation crossed her mind. "Do you really want to look?" She pulled the drawer open. Inside, at the very top, was a thick manila folder with her name on it. Her breath caught in her throat. Laura Delaney. Name. In Eric's handwriting. She swallowed, her fingers trembling as she lifted the folder out of the drawer. It was heavier than she expected. Thick with papers, documents. She flipped it open. And then her blood ran cold. Inside were bank statements, all in her name. But she had never seen them before. Accounts she didn't recognize. Deposits she never made. Thousands upon thousands of dollars moving through accounts linked to her social security number. Her signature on withdrawal slips, except she had never signed them. Her fingers flipped faster, her breath quickening. More documents. A lease for a penthouse apartment she had never seen. A contract for a safety deposit box she had never accessed. And then a suicide note. In her handwriting. Her entire body locked up. Whoa. This isn't real. The letter was dated tomorrow. It was written with the kind of detail that made it undeniable. The words blurred as she scanned through it. "I can't live with what I've done. I never meant for it to go this far. I stole from the firm, I lied, I destroyed lives. I can't take the guilt anymore. Sorry. I love you, Eric. I hope you can forgive me." Laura's knees buckled. Eric had written a suicide note for her. Her hands clutched the paper, her mind spinning. He had planted fake bank accounts, created a paper trail of corruption, made it look like she had embezzled from his firm. And then he had planned for her to take the fall. A sharp ringing filled her ears. Her vision blurred. Eric hadn't vanished. He had run. And he had left her to take the blame. Laura's pulse thundered in her ears as she gripped the forged suicide note in her trembling hands. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Eric had framed her. For a crime she hadn't committed. For a death that hadn't happened yet. Her mind whirled. Why? Why would he do this? They had been married for 8 years. They had built a life together, survived hardships, celebrated victories. And now he had vanished, leaving her a carefully planted noose of financial fraud and self-destruction. A fresh wave of nausea hit her. She had to think. Yes. The first instinct was to call the police. Report him missing. But the moment she did that, wouldn't they look at her? Wouldn't the evidence, the bank statements, the fake accounts, the perfectly typed confession, make her the prime suspect? She needed more information. Heart pounding, she turned back to the desk drawer, digging deeper. Underneath the folder was a sleek black USB drive. With shaking hands, she plugged it into Eric's laptop, waiting as it loaded. A single file appeared. Final step .p4. She hesitated for only a second before clicking it. The screen flickered, and then Eric's face filled the frame. Her breath caught. He was sitting at his desk, in the same leather chair she had just found slightly pulled back. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His expression unreadable. He looked calm. Come. If you're watching this, Laura, he began, his voice smooth and deliberate, then you've found the file, which means you're already in trouble. A chill ran down her spine. By now, you've seen the accounts, the suicide note, the evidence. You probably think I've betrayed you, that I'm some kind of monster. But trust me, Laura. This was necessary. Her nails dug into her palms. Necessary. You don't understand everything yet. But you will. He leaned forward, the shadows in the dim office flickering across his face. I need you to disappear. Laura's heart nearly stopped. The firm is coming for you. They'll find the accounts. They'll think you stole millions. They'll think you ran. If you stay, you'll be arrested. But if you go now, if you follow my instructions, you might survive this. No. Her world tilted on its axis. By the time you watch this, I'll be long gone. Don't waste time looking for me. Her skin turned ice cold. Eric had planned everything. The bank accounts, paper trail, her staged downfall. And now he was forcing her into a choice she never wanted to make. Stay and be destroyed, or run and prove herself guilty. Laura's mind screamed at her to think. If she ran, she would look guilty. If she stayed, she would be buried under his lies. There had to be a way out. A way to turn the game against him. Her eyes flicked to the file folders. To the forged signatures. To the letter written in her hand. And then an idea formed. She wasn't going to run. She was going to turn the trap back on him. Laura's breath was shallow as she stared at the laptop screen. Eric's words played over and over in her head. I need you to disappear. He wanted her to run. That was the plan. That was how he was going to win. If she ran, she would become the criminal he had painted her to be. But if she stayed, she'd be arrested for a crime she didn't commit. Checkmate. Unless she flipped the board. Her fingers clenched into fists. You made one mistake, Eric. He underestimated her. She turned back to the laptop, scanning the room for anything that could expose him. He had left behind the evidence, the paper trail, even the USB drive with his smug little message. But was there something he hadn't planned for? She clicked through the laptop's folders. The device was password protected, but Eric had never been one for complicated codes. After 3 failed attempts, she typed in their wedding anniversary. The screen unlocked. Her stomach clenched. Got you. She scrolled through his documents, email history, anything that might help. And then she saw it. A folder labeled Sent Items, with an email dated 3 nights ago. It was short. To unknown. Subject: everything is in place. She'll take the fall. I'll be out by Monday. Transfer the funds as discussed. No loose ends. Laura's hands turned ice cold. He wasn't just leaving her. He was running with stolen money. And he had a partner. A new kind of fury surged through her. He thought he could just erase her. Just vanish and let her take the consequences of his crime. Well, not without a fight. She copied the email to a USB drive. If there was one thing she had learned from Eric's years at the firm, it was that paper trails kill careers. Now, she just needed to make sure Eric wasn't the one holding the match. Laura grabbed her phone and dialed 911, forcing a frantic breath into her voice. Hello. Yes, I need to report a missing person. My husband. He never came home last night. It was half truth, half trap. She knew the moment she made the call, she was putting herself into the system. But that was the point. The sooner Eric's name was in the police database, the harder it would be for him to just disappear. The officer took her information, asking routine questions. Did he take anything with him? No, lie. When was the last time you saw him? Last night before bed. True. Was he acting unusual? Oh, you have no idea. Not that I noticed, she lied. She ended the call and exhaled. The clock had started. If Eric planned to vanish completely, he'd have to do it fast. But now there was a report. Trail. Laura turned back to the laptop. If she could find where Eric was hiding the stolen money, she could flip the story. She searched his banking apps. Nothing. His email. Crud. Then she remembered. Eric didn't trust banks for secret transactions. He used crypto. She dug into his history, looking for anything that might lead her to a wallet address. And then, buried deep in his files, she found an export log. A transfer to an anonymous Bitcoin wallet. Laura smiled coldly. If she could trace it, she could prove the money wasn't hers. She copied the transaction data onto her USB drive. Eric expected her to panic. He expected her to run. So she did the opposite. She packed a small overnight bag. Not too much, just enough to look like she was taking a break after the shock of his disappearance. She left the house exactly as it was, except for one thing. She left the suicide note on the kitchen counter. Then she locked the door behind her and drove away. Not out of town. Not to hide. Wait. Laura booked a room at a small motel near the outskirts of town. Somewhere anonymous. Somewhere she could watch. Then she waited. Hours passed. She checked the GPS tracker she had placed on her own car before leaving. At 3:17 a.m., an alert went off. Her car had been moved. Laura's breath quickened. She switched to the hidden dashcam feed, accessing it from her phone. The footage was grainy in the dark, but she saw it. Eric. He had come back. Laura had enough evidence now. The emails, the bank transfers, the dashcam footage of Eric sneaking back into the house where his supposedly suicidal wife had left a farewell note. It was all she needed. She hit send. The email went straight to Eric's firm, the police department, and the local news. Then she called the police. And waited. 30 minutes later, blue and red lights flashed through the motel window. Eric had played his game well. But she had played better. 2 weeks later, Laura sat in a police interrogation room. But this time, she wasn't the suspect. Eric was. The financial records had been traced back to him. The staged suicide attempt. Shattered. The dashcam footage. Undeniable. His lawyer, the same one who had once worked with him, looked at Eric in disgust. "Your wife outplayed you," he muttered. Laura leaned forward, her voice cool and sharp. "You should have just asked for a divorce." Eric didn't look at her. He knew he had lost. And Laura, she walked out of that station free. And for the first time in a long time, she was finally in control. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, Please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.